Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Chris Bottger's Album Club. Now, this is our fourth episode. As you probably know by now, we each kind of add suggestions to a list anonymously, kind of like a Secret Santa thing, and then I use a random list item picker online to pick the albums in the list, and then we listen to them and give our thoughts on them. So today I have with me Ben,
Hello.
Matthew,
I wanna be high, so high.
you really held that note there for a while, actually, and Santiago.
Hello.
Hey. Anyway, so I'm now going to be revealing the albums we're going to be listening to today, and we'll kind of give our initial impressions on them and what we think going into this. And then we will, after that, go listen to the albums that come back and give our final thoughts on them. Alright, so today, this month, the albums are In Utero by Nirvana and One Life Badger by Badger.
Weird killing.
Very strange pairing. We just both walk this time. Last time we had, Soul, so.
I have hold badge, yes.
Yeah, so, going into this, Ben, what are your initial thoughts on these albums?
I've hold badge before. Um, I don't think I've hold any of you all the way through, but I do know it. And some songs from it. Um, what are my initial thoughts? I don't know. I mean, Badger was a pretty decent album. That's all I gotta say. Like, it's a pretty fun, like, chill album. But like, I don't know. This is just such a weird pairing. Like the last pairing was kind of weird in some ways because they were pretty different. But like nothing. I mean, what had this Diesel Bullfrog? Although and the vibes are so different.
Yeah. Alright, Matthew, what are your initial thoughts on these albums?
I have not heard Badger One Life Live Badger.
One Live Badge.
Yeah, One Live Badger. So I'll see what that's about. As in Utero, I've heard this album. It is honestly, as a fan of Nirvana, not even though not as much as Foo Fighters, who the drummer Dave Grohl is in. Shout out to Zach. It's my favorite Nirvana album, so it's good. It would be cool to re-listen to it.
Alright, Santiago, what are your initial thoughts on these albums?
I haven't heard this album by Nirvana before. Uh, Neither I have heard anything from Nirvana. Like it hasn't catch my interest even. But I think like every album, which is most of the albums, every album we have done here, like sorry, I never listened before, so every time it's just fun to dig into this. So here's the same case. It's just I find myself very curious to know to listen to this album. Um, it's gonna be interesting to listen to Nirvana for the first time, basically, like a whole album. I mean, um, and the other one, I just have no clue because, like, compared to Nirvana, I know the name Nirvana, but here I just don't know. Like, Badger, I never heard this name before actually. Sorry, my ignorance here. So this one, I will also go blind completely here, and of course, it's gonna be very interesting to hear as well as Nirvana. So yeah.
Alright, well, as for me, I have heard Nevermind all the way through by Nirvana. I don't think I've listened to all of In Utero before, kind of like Ben. I have, of course, heard Badger before, One Life Badger. Me and Ben have both heard that before. Um, Uh, Great album. I love that album. And I will say I look forward to you all listening to it because it's a really good album. But yeah, I mean, I have decently high expectations for In Utero. I do know several songs from it, so I expect it to be at least like Nevermind of a similar quality. Matthew says it's better. I don't know about that. We'll see, I guess. But yeah, I mean, I think this is going to be probably one of the best pairings we've had in terms of the just raw quality of the albums. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to this episode. Alright, we've gone and listened to the albums now, and now we're going to give our thoughts on them. Alright, so we're going to start with In Utero by Nirvana, and we're going to start with you, Ben. What were your thoughts on this album?
In Utero, I think this is a pretty solid album. Yeah, it's a pretty good album. It's a pretty difficult album in some ways. A lot of it is pretty angry and frustrated and stuff. I mean, songs like "Scentless Apprentice" come to mind. But I think that this is a very strong artistic statement. I think standout tracks in that regard are "Solve the Solvents," which Kurt Cobain deals with certain loathing possibly to his family, though his lyrics, as usual, are pretty impenetrable. Heart-Shaped Box, I think, also is obviously the most famous song from this album, has a significant artistic achievement in its lyricism. Um, All Apologies is a song that I also think was a standout song, which is the album closer. Um, All Alone is all we know. I mean, there's also the song with name I'm not gonna say. That's obviously another standout track, in my opinion. Dealing with a very difficult topic. Altogether, I think that this was a very strong album. Because of its both sonic difficulty, like its sonic variety. It's like a pinnacle of grunge in that regard, and also in terms of its complicated, layered, at times almost impenetrable lyricism. So I thought that this album was pretty good.
Alright, Matthew, what were your thoughts on In Utero?
I really, really liked this album. Upon re-listen to it, like I remember I liked the album beforehand, but when I re-listened to it for this assignment, I was like, man, I actually really, really like this. To basically parry off what Ben said, I think, of course, this album is a very abrasive album. It's the album that Nirvana did after their um, I think basically their most popular work and their most acclaimed work, which is Nevermind, I think is good. But I think, I've said it before, I think this is my favorite of theirs. I think it's like a different way they wanted to do it. They didn't want to basically do, oh, let's do Nevermind 2.0 or something. They just like, let's do something different, honestly. And with all that, I respect that. And this was their last studio album before Kurt Cobain tragically committed suicide. Um, yeah, I would basically say I really like this album.
Alright, Santiago, what were your thoughts on In Utero?
Yeah. Well, like I didn't have much background at first about Nirvana, so it was my first time listening a whole album by them. And of course, as I always do, I go without expectations here. Um, it didn't took me long to realize that it was quite a lot of I will say hard rock. Surprisingly, I did enjoy it at some degree. It's like it will not. It's not my. I will not say it's like my cup of tea. Like something I will usually listen to. But there was something that I don't know. It was. it was great about it. Like I feel the energy about it. Like I was surprised by the fact I did like this album. I can mention specifically a song that stood out from the whole album, but I think the only things that I was not very fan of was like the yelling, you know. But overall, I think it was a pretty decent album.
All right. Well, I guess it's time to give my thoughts now. Well, I liked this album. I had not heard it before. I had heard Nevermind though, at least. So I had, I guess, more of a background when it came to Nirvana than Santiago did. Uh, Main song I really knew from this album was Heart Shaped Box, but I also knew the track right after it, kind of. But I listened to this and also have good tracks I kind of heard that I quite liked. I liked the album opener, Silver Soul Vince, that may actually be the best song on the album. I'm not so sure. Um, Francis Ford will have Whole Revenge on Seattle. That was one I liked. I also like Dumb. That's the track. That's track 6. So yeah, pretty good here. I liked this album. I like I like track 1. I like track 3. I like track 4. I like track 5. I like track 6 quite a bit. I also like track 9 and track 10 quite a bit as well. I don't really know exactly how I felt about all of those ones kind of after that, but I did like it generally as a whole. I thought it was also a pretty consistent album. The only really thing I would say is like the biggest dip in quality is I didn't care much for track 2, but even then I wouldn't say that was like a huge drop in quality. So yeah, overall I think it was a pretty consistent, pretty good album. I liked it, so yeah, that's my thoughts on In Utero by Nirvana. Does anyone else have any thoughts on In Utero before we move on to Badger?
Honestly, I feel more open after listening this album to dig more into Nirvana's music. Now that I think about it, because it never caught my uh, my interest till now.
Yeah, Santiago,
So yeah.
you're probably the only person who's listened to In Utero before Nevermind.
Well, that
Also,
I don't know if that's a compliment, but yeah.
So the album is One Live Badger by Badger. Um, so kind of a different style than Nirvana. I mean, I guess we've had larger gaps in style, but still. Anyways, Ben, we'll start with you. What were your thoughts on One Live Badger?
But Night Badge was also a pretty good album. I enjoyed listening to it. By far, the standout track for me was Winds of Change. Like that's the one that I feel like I like actually going back to. Um, but I also liked all the songs. On the Way Home, I guess is probably like the second best track on there. I mean, there's only 5 tracks total though. Oh, Badger is like a transitional album, I would say, kind of, or like a transitional like signpost, between kind of prog rock, which was the sense from Yes, as prog rock developed into more arena rock sounds. This album does sound pretty rock to me, despite not being very successful. Not really filling up arenas with it, but I would say that this was a pretty good example of that kind of transitional period. Yeah, I enjoyed it.
All right, Matthew, you're up next. How did you feel about One Life Badger?
I think it has similar problems that I had with in UFO, in which basically the style of how they were doing it, I rather listen to other people that were doing this type of kind of like classic rock, type music than like actually doing it, like them doing it. I think most likely I'm going to be the one who's like didn't really not hate or not. I was mostly like kind of didn't like this album, but I didn't think it was bad or anything. And with Live Badger, I kind of didn't care much about it. I think the songs are okay, but I wasn't like blown away or not. I just thought it was fine.
All right, Santiago, how did you feel about One Life Badger?
Well, like I'm basically in the same boat as Matthew regarding his opinion because I feel that it was not something that blew my mind like other albums from this era will usually do, with this kind of music. But even though that was not very, how I would say, like mind blowing, how he was saying, it was a good album anyway. Like I enjoy it throughout it, but there's not a song I could tell you that stood out here. Like every song felt basically the same, the same level of enjoyment. Like every song was used. It was like I would say like generic kind of thing. But it's not bad, okay? It's just that I feel there's other stuff stand that can stand out more than this album could do with its songs. You know?
All right, well, I would like to now give my thoughts on One Life Badger. I really like this album. I think it's a bangle album. It's very good. It's a very consistent album. I think no major dips in quality. I said that about the last album too. Both of these albums were really consistent, and I really like, in particular, I think "Winds of Change," which Ben already mentioned, is a particular bangle. Um, it's a real standout track in my opinion. Um, Also on the way home, but really all the tracks I think really really good here. I really like the thing they have going on here. What I detect really in this album is kind of a, I don't know, kind of a prog, but also slash almost folk sort of sensibility. It always kind of reminds me of like the Grateful Dead if they were prog, is what I think of Badger as, kind of. It's like the Grateful Dead if they were prog. And like that's an interesting sound to me. It's a really good sound. It feels like it's about kind of halfway between Yes, which is the band that Badger's kind of the spin off of. Badger was founded by one of the members of Yes who left, who was on Yes's first couple albums. It feels kind of like Yes, but also feels kind of like there's a bit of a Grateful Dead style, especially with how it's their debut album, but it's also a live album, as well as just kind of the structures of the song and some of the lyrical sensibilities. Um, but yeah, I really thought this album was good. It has great playing throughout. It has good songwriting. Yeah, it doesn't have any immediate hit single due to the length of the songs. But I will say Winds of Change or Wind of Change, I don't know which one it is. That song has a great structure, a great chorus to it, and really should have been a hit single in edited form. It just wasn't, so. Yeah, no, I mean, this album, I think, is a Wind of Change. Ben says it's Wind of Change. That song's just an absolute bangle. The album's just an absolute bangle, and this band really didn't do much after this, which is sad because they could well have improved upon it, even further their sort of style, but they just didn't. They did like they're like a backing band on like one album after this, and then they just like broke up. So that's a little sad, but still, I think it's a great album personally. So yeah, that's my thoughts. Now we need to discuss which album we liked better of the two. Ben, well, I'm pretty sure I know what everyone's going to say, but Ben, what album did you like better? You're the one who's been least opinionated in this video.
So, it's kind of tricky in a sense. That,
It's tricky.
I mean, on the one hand, Badger is like a good, strong album. I think it's pretty consistently enjoyable. Not just consistent quality, but like consistently enjoyable. I think I enjoyed most of it, other than Wind of Change, about even, kind of like Santiago said. On the other hand, In Utero is just clearly a lot more complex of a walk. I felt like a lot of pieces of it, lyrics and bits of it, would stay with me a lot longer. and like in my head and stuff in a way that just the ideas and sounds and stuff of Badge are really other than maybe when to change to some extent. It felt like ideas from In Utero, but some of the weird lyrics like I think I want to eat your cancer when you turn black or something like that. Or she has me like a Pisces when I'm weak. I've been trapped inside your heart-shaped box for weeks. Or I didn't have a father, instead I had a dad. Or everyone is gay. Like these things have been stuck in my head for 4 weeks. I've been trapped in the in utero shaped box for weeks. Um so while I do think that Badger is a pretty strong album, I think it's a pretty strong album. Like it is just not an complicated achievement as just like as much of an autistic achievement as In Utero. So I have to say In Utero.
All right, Matthew, you're next. Which album did you like better?
Me?
Yeah, Matthew.
Yeah, I can hear you. It's very clear. In utero for me, I think upon re-listening, I kind of like, kind of felt, you know, what this kind of the what you. I'm kind of lost for words. Like basically, you're just seeing the mind of Nirvana, which had Kurt Cobain and all them guys, including patron saint of this podcast, Dave Grohl. Um, Shout out to Zach. But it's basically like, what do you do after you make like the biggest album? Basically like Nevermind was like, each. I think I could probably say that each rock band has like the one album that's like their defining work, essentially. Like Beatles have Abbey Road. Led Zeppelin has Led Zeppelin 4. Um, Rolling Stone has Exile on Main Street, ELO. I would personally say Discovery, but most people say Out of Blue. Um, but like they just this it just built different. They built it different, and I commend all the stuff that they did on In Utero.
All right, Santiago, which album did you think was better?
Well, here it's more tricky for me to tell which album was better because I feel that both albums I felt like the same way, you know. But in the other hand, I feel that In Utero was more, I would say, more interesting to go throughout that album because it's something that I usually don't listen to, and since it felt, and since this fact, it felt somehow something new to me, and that's why I feel it was more interesting and perhaps more fun to listen this album rather than Badger, which is a genre of music that I'm mostly familiar with. However, as I said, I feel like I had like the same level of, that I really like these two albums basically to the same degree. However, since I said it was more interesting to listen to Nirvana Utero, I will go for this one over Badger.
All right. And as for me, I'm going to be the contrarian as usual. I'm going with Badger. Badger's an absolute banger album. If I do like both these albums, this is probably the best pairing we'll probably ever have in terms of the sheer quality and consistency of both albums on this uh, series. So I'm going with Badger just because I think it's a overlooked gem of the time period, 1973. There's a lot of great stuff in 1973, and I think Badger isn't really given its due. And I think the band Badger really should have made a follow up because they really could have, in my opinion, improved even more upon what they did. I mean, I think what they gave us was great. I think they could have done even better if they'd continued on, had 3, 4, 5 albums like other bands sometime, but they didn't, sadly. So this is kind of all we got. But I do like I did like Badger, so I love Badger. Everyone knows I love Badger, so I'm going with Badger.
Do you love the honey badger though?
Hmm, maybe.
There should be a band called the Honey Badgers or something.
There might be, as far as I know.
My favorite animal is the honey badger.
Nice, but you voted against Badger, so apparently
Well,
you
it didn't
prefer
have
um Utero.
it didn't have the honey badger or something.
I take a vinyl record of Badger and I dipped it in honey. Would you like it better?
I don't know. I would rather prefer eat food than a vinyl.
Alright, so now we're going to discuss. Oh, well, I guess I'm going to reveal who picked which album for the album club. So, before I reveal it, does anyone want to take a kind of a shot in the dark at who picked In Utero or One Life Badger?
Yeah, like I feel that Matthew picked Utero by Nirvana, and I think you, Chris, you were the one who picked Badger.
Alright, anyone else have any guesses? No? Okay, well, here it is. In Utero by Nirvana was picked by Ben and Matthew. They both submitted it to be on this list, actually. So in Utero, actually, there's only a few albums that had more than one like entry. I think I'm not sure this might have been the only one. I was thinking there was one other, but I'm not 100% sure. I'd have to go back and look at the list. But yeah, in Utero actually did have two picks. And Badger, yes, was submitted by me. I think it was pretty clear. So, yeah.
What a twist!
What a twist!
All right, let's do our rankings.
Matthew, when you said what a twist, you remind me of Dracula from Symphony of the Night.
All right, let's do our rankings.
All right. Who wants to go first with ranking?
Should we just go how we do it basically with like Ben, me, then Santiago, then you?
All right, Ben.
So I think the best album we listened to so far is In Utero. And then The Scream by Susie and the Banshees. And then either Dookie or Badger. I think there's probably a better case for Dookie being above Badger than the other way around. And then Badger. And then Corns by Tame Impala. And then Otis Blue, I guess. And then Strangers in the Night. And then From Genesis to Revelation.
All right. Matthew, what's your list?
All right, I'm gonna start from the bottom and then we go from the top. At my bottom is in the Badger album, and then From Genesis to Revelation by Genesis, then Strangers in the Night by UFO. I actually put this album up. I actually put Otis Blues higher, so it's like in my top 5. Otis Blues by Otis Redding. Then I put Dookie by Green Day. Then I'm gonna put In Utero by Nirvana. Then I'm gonna put Scream by Susie and the Banshees. And still at number 1 is Currents by Tame Impala.
All right, Santiago, what's your ranking?
Alright, so I'll start from the bottom as well. Uh, so right at the bottom, 7th place, we have Dookie by Green Day. 6th is The Scream by Susie, sorry, and the Banshees. Sushi, sorry.
I think it's
5th place,
Susie's.
Susie. Yeah, Susie and the Banshees. Yeah, the 6th place. Then the 5th place, Badger. 4th is Strangers in the Night by UFO. The 3rd place is In Utero by Nirvana. The 2nd is Currents by Tame Impala. And the first one is Otis Blue.
I want to give my list now. My opinions kind of changed, obviously. time to time, same as Santiago, but I think I've been pretty consistent on this list. At the bottom, I would say, is Corrence, then followed by The Scream. Well, I consider those to be kind of roughly on the same level. Those albums I just didn't really care for that we've done here so far. I don't think either one of them's bad particularly, though. Then above them, I have Strangers in the Night by UFO. That's one of the weak albums we've looked at. It's probably the least distinct album we've looked at, but I do still like it better than The Scream and Collins. Above that's Dookie. This is where you start getting, like, the good stuff. Like, this is actually really good. It's kind of surprising, actually, that in terms of how I've ranked them, in my opinions on them, it jumps from Strangers in the Night to Dookie, because even though in that episode I said I thought they were about the same level, I don't know, I actually do think Dookie's quite a bit better. I was just being kind of wishy-washy, I guess, that episode and just wasn't able to choose at the time, but I do actually think Dookie is the better album. Above Dookie I have From Genesis to Revelation, which is an absolute banger. I know no one here agrees with me, but I actually really like that album. Above that, then, is Otis Blue. That's a great one. And then above Otis Blue, we have In Utero, which, of course, we did today. And above In Utero, at number 1, we have One Live Badger. So I put the ones we did today in the top 2. Some of that might be recency bias, but to some degree, I do think they are the best albums we've looked at so far. I really like both of these albums. As I said, this is probably the best pairing we're ever going to get on here, unless we have it to end up with something strange. But considering the state of the current list I have, this is more than likely the best pairing we're going to ever end up with. Alright, well that's it for today's episode of Album Club. Please be sure to like this video, subscribe if you aren't already subscribed, and keep an eye out for the next episode because we've got some great stuff coming up. Thank you for watching, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.